Let me introduce myself. I used to work at Google. I ran FutureCam, a computational photography startup, then worked as CTO of another startup. I now work as a consulting CTO with multiple companies. Today we are going to talk about singletons. Let's look at the focus rect class. In a camera app, when you tap to focus, you get a rectangle or a square, right? Indicating that you have tapped to focus. That is represented by a focus rect. And we had a bug in FutureCam where under certain circumstances, or if you tap too quickly, you can end up with two focus rectangles on screen at once. To fix that, I made it a singleton. To make it a singleton, a traditional singleton, declare a property which is a constant, not a var. Make the initializer private so that nobody else can invoke it. So use design patterns to solve a specific problem, not because someone says they're good. Now that there's only one object, this bug is not even possible anymore. So see if you can solve your bugs at a fundamental level, not just putting a if check or something in that particular case, but by thinking how can I design it so that the bug is impossible. So this is the traditional singleton. But there are a couple of variations of the singleton pattern. One of them is what I call an access controlled singleton. This class analytics data, it has a variable to track the current instance of it. Actually, this is not an access controlled singleton. This is what I call a singleton at once, which means that you can have multiple instances, but only one at once. You have to create an object, you use it, then you destroy it. Then after some time, you can create one more object. And in the initializer, we check that the current instance is nil, and if not, give an error. So this is how we enforce it. This is private because, and notice that it's a var, not a let, because there would be different objects at different times. And it's private because we don't want everyone to be able to access it. Because then all the layering you have becomes very easy to violate if anyone and everyone is accessing it. You want to control access to only those who have been given the reference. So if you have a class A which invokes B, which invokes C, and C wants to use a singleton, in this design, C doesn't get an instance of this, so it can't use it. And if C needs to be given that instance, B needs to give it, which means A needs to give it to B. And at this point, you stop and think, should B be using this? Does it violate B's responsibility, the single responsibility principle, or C's responsibility? Is that the design we want? And if you have a layering where different layers in the system have different responsibilities, this will also give you an opportunity to think about whether the access is violating the layering. So this is one type of a class. The other type is, I don't know if we have it, let me just try to find it. Yeah, we don't, never mind. But the other pattern you could come up with is, if you go back to focus rect, you can make this, let me just code up a new file, that'll be easier. Class access controlled, let's call it focus rect, right? This is a third pattern called access controlled singleton. And the way it would work is, you would have a private variable private static var instance. This will get auto initialized to nil. And in your non-private initializer, you check that if instance not equal to nil. If this were Java, you would throw an illegal state exception or something, saying that you have gotten into an illegal state where you have two instances of this. Otherwise, you would say instance equal to self. And this ensures that the instance never changes. It is nil initially. Once once an instance of focus rect is created, it is assigned, and then it never changes. But it's still private. So now only those who have a reference to this can use it. So now again you are enforcing layering. But this is not a singleton at once. In a singleton at once, you have one object for a while, and then it gets deallocated, and then a new object. Here, once it's created, it exists for the lifetime of the program. So you can mix and match all of these to create different variants of singletons for your use case. So these design patterns are not handed down to us from the heavens. They're just templates. Feel free to modify them as needed. I hope this was useful. If you'd like me to work with your team, there's a link in the description.